Welcome, church, to Deuteronomy chapter 23, 24, and 25. We're going to find out some things about business and how God sees business today. But before we get there, I want to touch on one thing first. In chapter 23, verses 12 to 14, you can see a bit of an interesting passage about relieving yourself and how you were supposed to go out of the camp and dig a little hole and do your business and then cover it up. And it actually would specifically say, do that because the Lord your God dwells in your camp, and it would be better if things weren't messy and untidy and dirty where the Lord is dwelling among you. I think it's a pretty easy parallel to draw where we are not called to just live sanitarily in this passage. Although there is some logic for that, certainly. But here's the other point. Where God dwells among us, when God dwells among us, he asks us to live in a holy way where we actually create an environment for him that he is comfortable moving in. And I love this verse in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 1, that says, do not receive the grace of God in vain. Just in the same way that they were supposed to cover up their filth in this passage, lots of us see grace that way. We just see grace as a cover-up that just covers our sin. Grace is much more than that. Grace is also the strength to and the ability, if you will, to be able to actually make change in the area of sin so that we are not just covering it up, but we are actually changing to create a place for the Lord to be comfortable to live with us. So just think about that as you read this passage, that it's much more than just a sanitary law, although it is that as well, but it is about making God a place where he can be comfortable to dwell. Then, if we start in verse 15 of chapter 23 and we really run to the end of chapter 25, there's a lot of aspects of this chapter that deal with the heart of business and how God sees us earning money and being generous with money. And I want to just touch on a few. So one is, first off, verse 18 of chapter 23 says that you are not to prostitute yourselves and then bring the money that you earn doing that into the temple as an offering to the Lord. Friends, God cares about how we make our money. He wants us to be intentional that the ways in which we make money honor his character and honor the way he instructs us to live. And so this would be a good time to ask a question, Lord, do my business dealings or the way I earn money honor you above all else? That's a great question to ask. In light of that, he cares about how we make our money. And then you can see if you flip through chapter 24, verses 6 to 7 and kind of verses 10 through 15, there's another aspect about helping poor people here where God clearly, if we're going to just summarize that, he says, you actually would do well. You would be representing me well if you would be willing to actually risk loss so that you can help other people. And sometimes I think we get a little bit too caught up in making sure that we want to be good stewards. We don't want all of a sudden God's things that he's given us to be casually treated. Well, that's honorable to a point, but we've got to remember that God actually places higher value on people than he does on stuff. And so you can be a good steward in God's eyes and still risk losing things if it means helping other people that his Holy Spirit is leading you to help. So just keep that in mind as well. And then if we're going to flip down to verse 19, I'm going to call this Kevin's paraphrase here. If you look at chapter 24, 19 to the end of chapter 24, verse about 22 there. This I will call the paraphrase about business efficiencies. You know, here's the thing. We like to sometimes think that we are being good businessmen, according to the world standards, if we do everything as efficient as possible. We want to have the highest possible efficiencies so that we get the highest possible profits. And then what do? Then we feel really good when we take those profits and we give them to other people and distribute them to other people, and we feel, man, this is going great. Here's the problem. Who is actually potentially the center of that picture? Me. And here's another thing. When I think about poor people, I think, do they need actually a handout? No, they need a job. And here's a good question for us when we think about business efficiencies. Am I willing to sometimes either hire somebody that I don't feel with money that I don't feel that they're worth, or am I willing to be generous in actually leaving potential profit on the table if it means that I can help someone accomplish a feeling of self-worth and value and those kinds of things? My challenge for us, and maybe specifically for those who have businesses, are we willing to provide work for people that will help them feel valued and recognized by the Lord and be able to provide for their families? A good question for us to ask. And then we're going to close with this passage from chapter 25, verses 5 to 10 roughly. And this is just, we can summarize this as the instruction for people to take care of their family members. And while we could dive pretty deep into maybe some of the reasons as to why this particular brother here would maybe not want to do what's commanded, here's the point. 1 Timothy chapter 5 instructs us that if we do not look after those that are nearest to us, specifically our family members, we are actually worse than an unbeliever. Friends, sometimes families struggle to get along a little bit, but that is actually not relevant in this situation. We are called to look after our families and take care of them, even when it's hard, even when we may not agree with them. They are our primary focus in who we should look after first. So a good question would be, Lord, is there a family member that I need to forgive or help provide for? And help me to do that with zeal and cheerfulness. Blessings, church. Have a great day walking with Jesus.